Hey Mr. Anderson and anyone who will be watching this, I'm Jordan Gore from 5th period of US History class, and I'm representing the class of 2017. So you see I have a Christmas tree just to fit in with the holidays going on right now, and I just want to dive into it. So first starting off with what we revisited all in class, and which first of all is the personal pivotal event which I wrote about in one of our projects. And so that one pivotal event is about Childish Gambino's screenplay. And Childish Gambino, or otherwise known as Donald Glover, is a writer, comedian, singer, songwriter, and actor. And so what he implemented when he dropped this album Because of the Internet back in 2013, and when I found about this in 2014 of December, was that he also dropped the screenplay with it. What would happen is that you would read the screenplay while the track list, each song of the album followed along with how you read. And I really indulged in this type of writing because I found it more engaging to listen to music, as bad as it sounds, listen to music while you would read. I was really uninterested in writing, and I saw it as I push off to last minute. But once I really indulged into writing stories, different albums I would listen to, I found it more interesting. And in English, I really became more involved with my writing, and I made sure that it was at its best every time I turned it in. And I made sure it was as descriptive and detailed as possible. I would also send it to my friends to see their reactions on how each chapter of my story was, and I had really great responses with what they felt about how my story was. And how this affects me still today is that I'm still writing, and I don't think I'll stop because I have a lot of ideas in my head, and instead of keeping them in my head, I like to write it down and implement it into a fictional story. This him as a person and how he thinks about life still changed my views on things today, about how relationships with friends and girls, and how I am as a person today, about my attitude and how I approach things. And whenever I listen to different songs or I read different things, I'd almost get into the mind of the writer or the artist behind it. So now moving on to historical pivotal event. One I chose was the legalization of marijuana in Colorado, and which is on November 6th of 2012. And because of this legalization of this drug, it's been more accessible for people to use this drug. The thing is that people who have conditions such as cancer or etc., they have more easy access to this drug. And people, on the other hand, the druggies or drug users have used this drug marijuana as it has been easily more accessible for them. This drug marijuana has been more acceptable in our society because there hasn't been any bad side effects that anyone has seen, or there hasn't been any causes of death in this case of using it. But when people have posted around on Twitter or just any social media, it has influenced other people to try this drug. With a lot of sparks of debate, people have chosen their sides, and this profit made from the people who make marijuana or sell marijuana, and because of a higher demand, there's going to be more profit. And because of that profit, it's going to affect our generation greatly, because I see this drug making more money for our generation and generations to come, if any, because of the higher demand and how influential it has been on our generation to use it, and how it hasn't had any bad side effects from using it. Some people who I follow on social media have taken account to using this drug, and because of this drug, they've been using it a lot with their friends and other friends and everything. And it's just that as me as a person, or me as a friend to my classmates, or just being a classmate in general, I feel like it's gonna be around me for a while as I continue to grow. Right. Alright, so into a perfect storm of 1601 to the 1700s of why we turned to African American slavery. John Smith returned back home to England from a gunpowder incident, and people in Jamestown were lost. They didn't know what to do. The Native American tribes were against them. They had conflicts with each other, and so they didn't. The Native Americans did not want to help these colonists with their problems of not being able to eat, because these colonists, they didn't know how to plant anything for them to eat. because of the harsh weather and the harsh conditions. So what happened was that they had to eat their own excrement and finally come to the conclusion of eating each other because they couldn't make any food and they couldn't implement any food system to their colony. So when John Smith returned, he helped these colonists go back to their old ways of eating crops and not eating each other or eating each other's excrement. And because of that, he implemented a system of if man don't work, man don't eat. So people were working hard to eat. And so how this follows into how our perfect storm, why we went to African American slavery, was that nobody wanted to go back to the starving time. So these colonists wanted success forever, and they didn't want to go back to the starving time. So they wanted a labor force in which they would be able to be successful with their crops and be successful with what they eat. So they didn't have to go back to eating each other or eating each other excrement. Okay, so moving on from our revolutionary timeline of 1763 to 1781 of the Boston Massacre of March 1770. So what happened was that these British troops from Britain went to the colonies to actually protect these ongoing riots in the colonies, and that busts a myth because the British troops were there to help with these riots instead of cause these riots that these colonists were causing themselves. So with this Boston Massacre, British troops were receiving a lot of harassment from the colonists. The British troops were actually protecting a tax collector in Boston, and they shot at the colonists, and 5 people in total died. 1 African American died. And why this wasn't very important was that because of the deaths, the American colonists saw it as the British off to get them, and it gave them more of a reason to separate from Britain. This led to more hatred in the colonies and between the people and the British. From this event and many events before the American Revolution, this led up to the war between the British and the American colonists, and in separating from each other. Now on to the one historical event which led to the dissolution of the U.S. in 1861. But John Brown was an abolitionist, and he highly disagreed with slavery, so he felt it as a sign to God to take a stand and get rid of slavery. He highly believed that the abolishment of slavery could not be done without a bloodshed. He actually, with his sons, went in and chased a man into a hole who was a slave owner and was for slavery, into a hole, and actually cut him to pieces, which was actually a radical way of going about slavery. He finally convinced this little group of people to break into this armory and get supplies for the slaves to go against their masters. But the slaves didn't really see it as a great movement, so they weren't really for it, and they actually stayed in their plantations while Brown's men held this armory, which had a lot of supplies for guns and everything, and they took hostages, and they held place in it, the armory, and they went out by shooting. Some of Brown's men escaped and some died. His sons died, but him himself did not die. And he was taken into trial and was actually hung for his actions. And the North was very happy because they felt that there's finally someone who would go about taking a stand for slavery. And Abe Lincoln believed that it was a good movement for him to go against slavery, but he did not believe it had to lead to violence for slavery. The South was very upset about it. They actually said let him hang when he was hung. And this obviously led to a lot of tension between the North and the South, and led to the dissolution of the US and led to the Civil War. Alright, so this is the end of the video. Thank you, Mr. Anderson, for watching this, or anyone who got the link of this video and started watching it. I just want to thank you for all that you do, and for all that you do for your students. And I look forward to semester number 2 and what's to come for the class of US History. So thank you, and I'll see you later. Yeah.